come on. This is a super important subject to me. So I'd like as many people as possible to hear it. I think it's a very relevant topic to talk about. And hopefully, some of you will take something from it. So loud out there. Let's see. I'll make sure my lighting is on. Chat filter. Just trying to wait a few seconds for folks to come in. This is a big deal for me in terms of what I'll be speaking about. So I think it's pretty relevant, and lots of people should hear it. All right, y'all, here we go. Thanks for joining my live. And today I'm just going to be talking about schools, or my personal take on schools from my children being homeschooled and me doing a lot of research. And the fact that I believe that we're all kind of told a very similar story, if not the exact same story, in terms of going to school, which is pretty simple, right? You go to school, we go to school to get good grades in order to become successful in life. And I think that that's a mantra that is whispered to most people from a very young age, preschool age, maybe even kindergarten, all the way up into graduation. It's that kind of that same mantra. You know, you go to school, you get good grades, and therefore you have the opportunity to become successful in life. And it's reinforced by all adults that like are around us. So that's fed to us over and over and over and over again. But what if that's not just an oversimplification, but actually like a fundamental lie that we're all told from a very young age? What if it is just a fundamental lie that we're told about school? What if the very system we trust, right? Because I feel like most of us do trust the school systems. What if that system was designed to build our future, right? Because why else will we go to school? We're going to school to educate ourselves to become somebody as we get older. And we trust that the design of that system is going to help us in our endeavor. But what if that same system that we trusted was only implemented to limit us in our adulthoods? I know the thought might be a little bit crazy because, like I said, that same mantra is whispered to us from a very young age. Go to school, get an education, and you'll become successful, right? But bear with me for a second. In my opinion, the modern school system isn't some malfunctioning machine like some people think of it. You know, it's not malfunctioning. It's actually functioning the very way that it was intended to function. And once I was able to like really, really grasp that and understand school's like honest purpose, it changed the blueprint of school for me forever. And that's one of the reasons why I took my kids out of school in the first place. Because once I was able to really see that that machine was built for a very specific purpose, I really didn't want anything to do with that. My daughter only went back to high school this year because she wanted to try high school. And this isn't like any type of weird rant or conspiracy theory. This is like honestly just how I feel in terms of like my own research and what I've gotten out of it. If you look back and you go through the history of how schools were formed in the United States, right, you'll start to cast doubt on the system that you've thus far believed in. And if you really, really, really think about it, from day one, when you went to school, I'm talking kindergarten age, right? Everything changed because when you were at home, everything was free flowing, right? You got to do what you wanted to do when you wanted to do it. You got up when you wanted to. You ate when you wanted to. You played when you wanted to. And then as soon as you were enrolled in a school and you went to school as early as kindergarten, right? At that point, you're being told where to sit, where not to sit, when you can talk, when you can't talk, when you can eat, when you can't eat, and things of that nature, right? Like, you can't even really use the bathroom when you want to. It's a complete shift from being at home to being in school. Everything is extremely structured. There's no such thing as freedom when it comes to school. You're going to eat when they tell you to. You're going to use the bathroom when they tell you to. Anything that you want to do once you get into school, your life changes. Once your parents left you, once your parents went back to work and they sent you to school, everything changed. Nothing is any longer free flowing. You're not allowed to do what you want when you want. So if you were innovative as a child, if you did have your own thoughts, if you were creative, a lot of that leaves you once you start going to school, because it starts being, you get to eat at 12 o'clock or whatever time it is. You sit over there. There's rows. Schools are built around the bell system, right? When the bell rings at 8 o'clock, you need to be in this chair. When the bell rings at 12 o'clock, you need to be at the lunch table. No, that's not your lunch table. You sit at that lunch table, right? So if you think of it in terms of that, what is school actually preparation for? And when school started way back in the days, y'all, it started because out of war, and it was to create soldiers is really what it was for. It wasn't to create independent thinkers. It was to create soldiers. And that's why we do have bells in school to this day, right? And we're not even able to use the bathroom. If you're in school, you can't even use the bathroom when you feel like it, right? Which is kind of crazy to me. But I think a lot of us, or probably all of us, have had that experience with school, right? And that's from the moment that we step into kindergarten, right? A very powerful, pervasive gospel is recited to us by adults. And they genuinely believe that what they are doing is factual and correct, right? Which is, school's the great equalizer. School will pull you out of poverty. School is the only place you can go to find education. That is the narrative that is pushed on us. That's the cornerstone of America. It's the cornerstone of the American dream. Go to school, become educated, and you will be great. If that were factual, there would not be poverty in America. There would not be so many homeless people in America. But that is the narrative that we will continue as parents to push on our children. Unfortunately, it's just a fairy tale. It's not real. If you look at the numbers, since 1970, real people in the US, right, have tripled. So more people are going to school every day. You'd expect there to be a huge leap in educational outcomes, but there isn't. There should be a dramatic improvement in student performance across the board in the United States, but there isn't. Scores have remained stubbornly flat for decades. This has been going on for decades, right? There haven't been math gains, right? We've literally jumped 1% in the last decade. Now, the cost of the supposed school equalizer has skyrocketed, though. So for every kid that goes to school every day, the school system gets paid a very specific amount of money. So that number has drastically increased. Debt in the US has drastically increased, but the so-called school stabilizer still hasn't happened. I would encourage folks to do their own research about schools, how schools were built, and the reasoning behind schools being built, because it really just didn't happen like that they wanted everybody to become educated and then schools were built. No, they needed to build soldiers for war. And I don't think that education is a bad thing. I think everyone should be educated. I just think you have to be really careful on how you're being educated. The US school system is completely rotten. It just is, and it always will be because of its sole purpose. If you ever had a dream, if you can think back to when you were little and you were a child and you had dreams and you had ambitions, I don't know, maybe you saw, I don't know, like a lot of little boys want to be a firefighter or whatever it is. I think a lot of those things get destroyed in school because school is very robotic by nature. So folks tend to become robotic when you're in school your entire life. Right? And I don't think that people really should be underestimating this. This has been going on for centuries, right? If you journey back to like 1806, right, the kingdom of Prussia and what that meant, right? It was a major European power. They suffered humiliation and defeat at the hand of Napoleon, right? It was a military disaster. So what happened after that? They started building schools because they needed folks that would listen and do what they were told. And that was the way for them to control it, by having people go to school. They needed obedience. They needed conformity. And that's what school is about. It's about being obedient. It's about conforming to what someone else is telling you is correct. And I mean, let me know in the comments if you guys feel differently, or if you think it's different than what I'm saying, if you don't feel that that's what schools are about. I mean, this is just my perspective. It does not, you know, obviously it's not going to be everyone's perspective, but it is my perspective. You know, education is, at least in the US, it's state controlled. So the states tell us what we can and we cannot do in terms of education. They tell us when our children have to start going to school, what time they get out of school, what time they have to be in school, and what they will be taught in school, right? I think a perfect example is my son, who is now over the age of 18, was preparing himself for an interview. So he did his resume, and his resume, honestly, y'all, it looked like shit, right? And in speaking to him, and it just really made me angry, because he formatted his resume how he was taught to do in high school, or maybe, I don't know, maybe his first 6 months, because he didn't really do college. He only did, like, I don't know, maybe at the first year of college. So he did his resume based on that, which was completely incorrect, you know. But those are the kind of things that you are taught in school, because fundamentally school was created to build soldiers and factory workers, right? And then you have the outliers, right, which was created to separate the rich and the poor. And that's why we have things like SAT testing, right? Because that in itself will separate the rich from the poor. I don't believe that SAT testing is any form of an indication of how well someone will do in life, but that's what they say it is. They say that that is going to tell you how well student A will do or how well student B will do. But student A and student B could come from two very different backgrounds. Student A might have a private tutor versus student B does not. Those things are not factored into that testing model. So in my opinion, that testing model, the SAT testing model, is a crock of shit. Because you take two students from two very different backgrounds and they are unequivocally going to do different on the test. If you have a child that does not have a lot of support, that his parents are not wealthy, that cannot pay for the extras that student A gets, then obviously he's not going to do as well on the test, but that doesn't mean that he's not going to do as well in life. So I just feel like it's just a total, like, sham. Like, it's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. And I feel like it messes up one's self-esteem to know, oh, I didn't do very good on this test, or oh, I didn't do very well on that test. Right? But that's the educational system for us. You know? I mean, if you really think about like early demands on a factory, if you think about factory workers and the demands that are put on factories workers, right? They need, everything is pretty much interchangeable, right? They're relying on very specific things and they have to be effective, right? That's how schools are built. That's how schools build children. And to me, it's just really sad. I mean, you're talking about a 5-year-old, maybe a 5-year-old that starts in kindergarten. The program starts literally, the program might even start earlier than when you go to school, because your parents will consistently give you that mantra. You know, go to school, get a good education, get good grades so you can live a good life. The reality is, it's just not true. I know people that went to college for very specific things. Who is that? That don't even work in those fields.
Hi, Mom.
Hi, Ems. Go that way.
What are you doing?
Why don't you have clothes on? Why aren't you dressed? What are you doing?
Because I'm chilling. I'm doing.
No, thank you. You still have to go to the gym. No one's here with you, so you're gonna have to put some clothes on.
Yeah, and a little bit.
So, anyways, in my opinion, the true curriculum, right, the one that people aren't talking about, really isn't about math or about history. It's about the hierarchy. It's conformity, right? It's the subtle lesson that we all get. If you quantify it, that's really what it is. And it's judged by external authorities, i.e. the principal, the teachers, all those people. That's literally all school is about, conformity. So when you're sending your children off to school, do your research. Don't just stick them in a classroom. Do your research. Because once you start to run that program and conform, you just become another worker bee. And that's really all school is about. Sit here, the bell rang, go to lunch. Teacher, can I use the bathroom? As if you should have to pay a quarter to go to the potty. I'm hungry. No, you have to wait. It's all about conformity. It's not about going to school, getting the lessons, learning math, because the average person that goes to school and graduates high school still doesn't know how to do something simple like budget for expenses every month. There are people that get through college and still don't know those things, right? You get out of college with what? A whole bunch of debt and probably nothing more. Credit card debt and school debt. Still have no savings because school doesn't teach you those things. So school isn't giving you life skills. It's going to give you the bare minimum. It's going to put you in a place where all you ever do is just have your little average job. And if you do go to school to become a doctor, a lawyer, you know, I don't know, whatever, a veterinarian, whatever you want to do, then there's a lot of debt that's going to come with that. And that still doesn't mean that you're going to be in a position of true happiness, right? And you always have to measure, if I'm working a 12-hour shift, right? How much am I getting paid? Even if you are making seven figures a year. Well, I don't think anybody's making 7 figures a year, but even if you are making 6 figures a year, how much of my time am I trading for that dollar, right? Are you even spending time with your families? Most people are not. So school still isn't going to teach you the fundamentals that you actually need to get through life. So be very careful when you just send your kids off to school and you follow that same mantra of go to school, get an education, and you will do well in life. Yes, it is the American dream, but it's all a sham. It's just not true. Just because you go to school and get an education doesn't mean that you're going to do very well in life. That's not what that means. There are a lot of skills that you need. And if you have a dream or you have a goal, follow that. It doesn't have to be just what the teacher said or what the school said or even what your parents said or what your parents taught you. I know my mom taught me to go to school, get an education, and, you know, I'd make it in life. But as I got older and started doing my own research and started having my own children and figuring things out for myself, that's not necessarily what I wanted for my children, you know? And it could be just something as simple as, you know, me asking my kids, like, what did you have for lunch? Or what time did you go to lunch? And it made me extremely uncomfortable to know that, like, my daughter would tell me things, maybe like in the first grade, she was in school then, Maddie, the older one, and she would tell me things like, yeah, Mom, today when I was in class, I was hungry and I really wanted a snack and I couldn't get a snack. And those things would really, really bother me. But even when I would talk to some other people that I knew about it, like friends, family members, whatever, they would say things like, well, Mahaseen, that's not real life. You can't just eat when you want to. So you know, it's good that she's being taught these things, but for me as a parent, it never made sense. Because to me, you shouldn't stop someone from eating when they're hungry. Like it should be your right to eat when you're hungry. Why is it not? You know? So, and I don't know how you guys feel about it. You might feel that it's fine. Wait, let me see these comments. Pride, I'm not sure what you mean, darling. You don't say hi to anyone, sorry. Sorry, y'all, I was reading the comments. Someone said I don't say hi to anybody, and it's not that I don't want to say hi to you people. It's just that I was talking about school. Because in my opinion, school is modern day slavery. The average job is modern day slavery, right? If you go work at a retail store or like for a restaurant, you don't feel that's modern day slavery? Like the amount of work that you're gonna have to do? What are McDonald's workers making these days? Oh, well, in the US, I think they had that price adjustment as far as hourly pay, but I mean, I can't imagine going to work for somebody for $20 an hour or for $30 an hour for that matter. It's just not enough money to live. Where to learn English? You know, there's actually a lot of apps just right on your phone that can teach you English. But if you want to go to school to learn English, you should go to school to learn English. But this really isn't an English class. I'm not saying don't go to school. You can go to school if that's what you want to do to learn English. What I'm saying is I don't agree with schools or how they're built or the things that they teach. And once you learn English, what will you do then? What is your learning English, like how is that going to help you? Is it going to afford you a better life? Is it going to make you a shitload of money? Like, what is it going to do? Because there's a lot of people that speak other languages that get by just fine. Not just English, you know? So I don't know that that's going to help you be more successful learning English. But what I do know is that even like high school, there's a lot of pressures that go on in high school, you know? And I think a lot of parents pressure their kids in high school because they want them to take all those other tests and, you know, the GATE program for gifted children and blah, blah, blah. That is nothing but separating the rich from the poor. Because most children that are part of that program come from affluent families that can afford all the extra stuff, all the extra tutoring. They are more present with their children. So they have time to teach their children and things like that. Whereas in a poor family, maybe the mom and dad are working those 12-hour shifts and don't have that kind of time. So does that mean that the kid's dumb? No. But the kid isn't being nurtured like the other child. But it is a way to separate the rich from the poor. So I'm sure it's not like a super popular topic with a lot of folks because it's not a bullshit topic, like it's a real topic. But again, I would just encourage everyone to do their research because we're in a state, especially like post-COVID, you know, where mental health is skyrocketing. Like it's at an all-time high where you have kids that are killing each other, you know, or trying to hurt themselves or dealing with, you know, depression, dealing with instability. There's a lot of people that still haven't recovered from COVID, right? Job loss was obviously a huge thing during COVID. But even a lot of businesses went out of business during COVID, or didn't go out of business during COVID, but never recovered after COVID. So their businesses are still not alive. So there's still a lot of pressures that folks have post-COVID. But I know mental health is a huge one, especially with children post-COVID. So the thought of going back into a space where your kid's in school and, you know, you're harassing them about their grades, you're harassing them about test scores, it's not that serious. I mean, do you want a kid that goes to school and gets all F's? Absolutely not. But how much of your child's education are they actually gonna like use in like the real world? Like in the real world, once they're adults and they're out there and they're doing their thing, how much of their elementary school, middle school, and high school education are they actually gonna use? It's just like things that you should just be asking yourself. I'm sure everyone loves their kids just like I love my kids. So these are really just questions you should ask yourself. Like, have you ever asked your kid, are you uncomfortable when you're in school? Do you agree with the fact that you can't necessarily use the bathroom when you want, or whatever the case is? You know what I mean? It's just, I'm just gonna say, talk to your kids, make sure your kids are comfortable, make sure you are completely comfortable with whatever you're doing in terms of school. Look for alternatives if you'd like to. If this video resonates with you at all, hit the like button, share it, and subscribe. See you guys later. Bye-bye.